The race that was never real. Crashgate, 2008. Nelson Piquet Jr. was told to crash his car on purpose, and he did it. In 2008, at the Singapore Grand Prix, Renault orchestrated the most cynical manipulation in Formula One history. The plan was elegant in its simplicity and horrifying in its execution. Piquet would crash on lap 14, bringing out the safety car at exactly the moment that would benefit Fernando Alonso's fuel strategy. Not a racing incident, not bad luck, but a choreographed accident designed to steal a victory that Alonso had no right to win. For over a year, nobody knew. Alonso won that race, Renault celebrated, and the sport moved on, believing it had witnessed genuine competition. Fans cheered what they thought was brilliant strategy and lucky timing, never suspecting they'd been watching theatre instead of racing. The truth only emerged when Piquet, dropped by the team and desperate for revenge, confessed to authorities who couldn't believe what they were hearing. Pat Simons and Flavio Briatore, two of the sport's most respected figures, were banned indefinitely. Renault faced criminal charges in multiple countries, but the real damage went deeper than penalties or bans. Every close finish, every surprise result, every perfectly timed safety car became suspect in the minds of fans, who now knew that sometimes the racing wasn't real at all. The fuel strategy that murdered racing, refueling era, 1994 to 2009. The FIA brought back refueling to make racing more exciting. Instead, they accidentally turned Formula One into a glorified time trial where overtaking became optional. The 1994 refueling introduction was supposed to fix Formula One's processional race problem. The governing body figured mandatory pit stops and varying fuel loads would create strategic chaos, making every race unpredictable. Teams loved the idea because it meant they could overcome performance gaps through clever strategy instead of just raw speed. But refueling broke competitive balance in ways nobody saw coming. Following cars closely became pointless because it destroyed tire performance and fuel economy without giving you any strategic advantage. Track position became so valuable that overtaking was actually counterproductive. Better to just wait for pit cycles and hope your strategy worked out. The results were devastating for the sport. Overtaking statistics fell off a cliff, and fans started complaining that races had become boring parades. Teams got so obsessed with pit windows that they forgot about actual racing. When Formula One finally banned refueling again in 2010, they discovered that 15 years of strategic racing had basically trained an entire generation of drivers to avoid wheel-to-wheel combat. When teammates become enemies, Multi-21, 2013, Sebastian Vettel was told to hold position behind Mark Webber, and he said no. In front of 80,000 people in Malaysia, Red Bull's golden boy committed the ultimate act of betrayal. Multi-21 was supposed to be simple, a code word telling both drivers to maintain position, preserve the cars, bring home maximum points for the team. Vettel was faster, but Webber had track position, and sometimes that's how racing works. The team had spoken, the order was clear, but Vettel saw an opportunity and took it, overtaking his teammate with moves so aggressive they bordered on dangerous. Webber, realizing he'd been stabbed in the back by his own team's golden boy, could only watch as victory slipped away. The fury in his eyes was unmistakable, his trust in Red Bull shattered beyond repair. Team principal Christian Horner looked like a man who'd lost control of his own drivers. Even Vettel seemed shocked by what he'd done, offering apologies that felt hollow when everyone knew he'd do it again, given the chance. Red Bull had created a monster. By favoring Vettel for years, by making it clear he was the chosen one, they'd taught him that team orders were suggestions rather than commands. When he finally acted on that lesson, it destroyed any pretense that Red Bull treated their drivers equally. The tire compound that turned racing into roulette. Pirelli's deliberately degrading rubber. 2011 to 2016. Pirelli was handed a very specific brief when they returned to Formula One. Make tires that fall apart quickly and create chaos. They succeeded beyond anyone's wildest nightmares. The 2011 season marked Pirelli's return with compounds specifically designed to degrade dramatically over short distances. The FIA believed unpredictable tire performance would bring back strategic uncertainty that had been missing during during Bridgestone's boring monopoly era. Pirelli developed rubber that would lose chunks of performance after just a few laps, forcing teams to balance speed against longevity. The problem was that deliberately fragile tires completely changed the relationship between driver skill and results. The fastest drivers got penalized for pushing hard, while slower drivers stumbled onto podiums by managing degradation better. Tires became so unpredictable that even Pirelli couldn't tell teams what would happen, leading to strategic decisions based on pure guesswork rather than any actual expertise. Drivers hated it, teams hated it, and fans complained that Formula One had turned into more of a tire management exercise than an actual racing competition. The governing body eventually pressured Pirelli to develop more predictable compounds, but the damage was done. Several years of racing had been reduced to a lottery where rubber degradation mattered more than driving ability. Ferrari's Austrian disgrace. Team orders, 2002. Rubens Barrichello was winning the Austrian Grand Prix in 2002, and Ferrari made him give it away. Not through strategy, not through pit stops, but through the kind of blatant manipulation that made 100,000 fans boo the sport they'd paid to watch. The order came on the final corner of the final lap, as clear and devastating as any communication in Formula One history. Barrichello, leading comfortably, was told to let Michael Schumacher pass for a victory that meant nothing in a championship that was already decided. Schumacher didn't need the win. With 11 races remaining and a massive points advantage, the German was already cruising toward his 5th world title. But Ferrari's obsession with their number one driver had reached pathological levels, turning every race into a corporate exercise rather than sporting competition. The moment Barrichello slowed and Schumacher passed was captured in excruciating detail, broadcast to a global audience that couldn't believe what they were watching. This wasn't racing, it was corporate theatre, performed by drivers who looked ashamed of their own actions. The crowd's response was immediate and furious. Boos rained down from the grandstands as Schumacher tried to give the trophy to Barrichello in a gesture that felt more insulting than generous. The FIA acted swiftly, banning team orders from that point forward, but the damage was done. The DRS zone strategy that killed organic overtaking. DRS introduction, 2011. The drag reduction system was supposed to help drivers overtake by reducing aerodynamic drag. Instead, it created artificial overtaking that made real racecraft feel completely irrelevant. The 2011 season introduced DRS as Formula One's technological solution to the overtaking crisis that had been plaguing the sport since aerodynamic development made following cars impossibly difficult. The system allowed drivers within 1 second of cars ahead to reduce rear wing angle and gain straight-line speed, enabling overtaking opportunities that would otherwise be impossible. But DRS fundamentally altered the nature of overtaking by making passes so easy in designated zones that they stopped feeling like genuine skill achievements. At the same time, it made overtaking nearly impossible outside DRS zones, creating this weird two-tier system where passes either felt artificial or couldn't happen at all. The criticism from drivers was relentless. They argued that DRS made racing less skillful rather than more exciting, with defensive driving becoming pointless in DRS zones. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton even turned it into a dangerous game of chicken in Saudi Arabia, deliberately braking at 200 miles per hour to avoid being first into the DRS zone. The most sophisticated technological solution had completely missed the point, eliminating the very elements of genuine racecraft that made overtaking naturally compelling to watch in the first place. Ferrari's fuel flow mystery. The advantage that vanished, 2019. Ferrari's engine advantage in 2019 was so suspicious that the FIA banned it mid-season, and suddenly the fastest cars on the grid became midfield runners struggling for points. The 2019 season had been defined by Ferrari's straight-line speed advantage, an edge so pronounced that even Mercedes and Red Bull couldn't explain it. Ferrari's cars would fly past everyone on the straights, gaining tenths of seconds that shouldn't have been possible with the same fuel flow regulations as everyone else. The fuel flow sensors were supposed to prevent exactly this kind of advantage, monitoring how much fuel teams could use per second and ensuring everyone played by the same rules. But Ferrari had found something, some interpretation or manipulation that gave them extra power when it mattered most. The FIA's investigation was secretive, conducted through private meetings and confidential technical bulletins. No public accusations were made, no penalties announced, just a quiet directive that changed everything overnight. Immediately after the directive was issued, Ferrari's performance collapsed. Cars that had been winning races were suddenly fighting for points. The speed advantage that had defined their season vanished as completely as it had appeared, leaving everyone to draw their own conclusions about what had actually been happening. When honesty becomes optional, McLaren's Liegate, 2009, Lewis Hamilton was told to lie to the stewards about letting Jarno Trulli pass under safety car conditions, and McLaren learned that some victories aren't worth the price of integrity. The 2009 Australian Grand Prix was chaotic, full of safety cars and confusion, the kind of race where split-second decisions determine results. Hamilton let Trulli pass during a safety car period, a move that seemed routine until the stewards started asking questions about what had actually happened. McLaren panicked. Instead of telling the truth about their instructions to Hamilton, they constructed an elaborate lie, coaching their driver to claim he'd made the decision independently. The deception was unnecessary, the actual offense minor, but the cover-up turned into a catastrophe. The truth emerged days later when radio communications were analyzed, revealing the extent of McLaren's dishonesty. Hamilton, who'd been promoted to third place after Trulli's penalty, was disqualified entirely. Worse, his reputation for honesty was shattered just as his career was taking off. McLaren's explanation was pathetic. They'd been confused, acting on incomplete information, trying to protect their driver from a penalty that might not have come anyway. None of it mattered once the lies were exposed. In Formula One, teams can be forgiven for bending technical rules, but lying to officials crosses a line that endangers the sport's credibility. The budget cap that rewarded creative accounting. 2021 Budget Cap Introduction. The FIA introduced budget caps to level the playing field. Instead, they created a new form of competition where accounting creativity mattered more than engineering innovation. The 2021 season marked Formula One's first serious attempt at comprehensive budget caps, with a $145 million limit designed to prevent wealthy teams from simply outspending their competitors into irrelevance. The concept addressed legitimate fan complaints about financial resources becoming more important than engineering talent or driver skill. But implementing budget caps revealed how difficult defining and monitoring spending actually was. In a sport where teams had developed sophisticated cost-hiding methods over decades of unrestricted spending, teams immediately invested heavily in accounting and legal expertise specifically designed to find loopholes that would allow continued spending above the limits while technically complying with regulations. The result was constant disputes about compliance and interpretation, with the FIA struggling to enforce complex regulations that provided numerous avenues for creative interpretation. Budget caps became their own arms race, focused on accounting innovation rather than technical development. Red Bull was eventually found to have exceeded the cap, receiving penalties that their rivals argued were insufficient. The most necessary reforms had created entirely new categories of problems that were potentially as damaging as the original financial inequality issues they were meant to solve. Benetton's hidden code when software becomes suspicion, 1994. Michael Schumacher's 1994 dominance was so complete that rivals suspected Benetton was cheating with illegal traction control hidden in their car's computer code. The season was defined by Schumacher's ability to launch off the line better than anyone else, his starts so consistently perfect that they defied statistical probability. While other drivers struggled with wheel spin and fought for grip, Schumacher would rocket away from pole position like his car was equipped with launch control systems that were supposedly banned. Launch control and traction control were prohibited in 1994, part of Formula One's effort to put driving skill back at the center of competition. But banning technology and preventing its use are two different things, especially when that technology can be hidden in lines of computer code that only experts can analyze. The investigation into Benetton's software was unprecedented, requiring technical experts to analyze thousands of lines of code, looking for hidden functions that could provide illegal assistance. What they found was inconclusive but deeply suspicious. Benetton claimed that any traction control systems in their code were inactive, left over from previous seasons, but not functional during races. The evidence suggested otherwise, but proving illegal use required more than suspicious code. The penalties were significant, but not decisive. Benetton was punished for having the illegal software, but Schumacher kept his race wins and ultimately his champions. The elimination, qualifying disaster. 2016. Formula One wanted to make qualifying more unpredictable by eliminating the slowest driver every 90 seconds. Instead, they created television so boring that even the commentators ran out of things to say. 2016 season began with elimination qualifying as Formula One's latest attempt at Saturday drama. The system was designed to provide constant jeopardy by eliminating drivers every 90 seconds throughout sessions, promising nail-biting television as drivers fought desperately to avoid elimination. But elimination qualifying revealed how artificial jeopardy could completely backfire and create perverse incentives that made qualifying less exciting rather than more dramatic. Drivers started avoiding track time during crucial moments to prevent elimination due to mechanical problems rather than performance issues. The 90-second intervals were too rapid for any meaningful competition. The result was surreal. Empty track time when drivers should have been fighting for positions, followed by desperate last-minute rushes that created dangerous traffic rather than exciting competition. Track position and timing mattered more than actual driving skill. Elimination qualifying was abandoned after just 2 races when the format created confusion and boredom rather than the excitement it promised. Formula One reverted to the previous knockout system that had actually worked effectively. The experiment proved that artificial drama is always inferior to organic tension. Hamilton's Abu Dhabi Rebellion, when drivers choose war, 2016. Lewis Hamilton was told to speed up in Abu Dhabi, 2016, and he chose to destroy his own team instead. With Nico Rosberg's championship on the line, Hamilton decided that if he couldn't win the title, he'd make sure his teammates suffered for it. The strategy was brilliantly vindictive. Hamilton controlled the pace at the front, driving just fast enough to stay ahead, but slow enough to back Rosberg into the charging Red Bulls and Ferraris behind. Every corner became a chess move, every straight a calculated risk designed to maximize his teammates' misery. Mercedes panicked. Radio messages flooded Hamilton's cockpit. Team principal Toto Wolff and engineer Pete Bonington pleading with him to speed up, to think about the Constructors' Championship, to remember that Rosberg was supposed to be his teammate rather than his enemy. Hamilton's response was coldly professional. He acknowledged the messages, promised to consider them, and then continued driving exactly as he pleased. This wasn't hot-headed rebellion. It was calculated destruction of one of the sport's most successful partnerships. For 30 laps, Mercedes tore itself apart in public. Hamilton, knowing his title hopes were dead, decided to take his teammates' championship dreams down with him. The championship survived. Rosberg won the title. But Mercedes learned that even the most successful teams are only as strong as their drivers' willingness to cooperate.